Hello and welcome to lesson 3 of this MakeCode Arcade, and in this lesson what we are going to be doing is we're going to be building the rest of this game. So the plan is to create a few little things. We want our little player here, a little spaceship, to be able to shoot, and we want it so that when it shoots, if it hits one of these items here, we want it really to add a score. We can put a score counter on this, which is good. We are also going to look at adding a slightly better background instead of our dark black background. And the other thing that we're going to look at doing is adding some sort of background music to it as well. So it's a little bit better. And if we've got time, we'll look at it making a start screen background. Okay, so this is the code that we've written so far. Now, if you are just looking at lesson 3 before you've completed lesson 2, bad news, you will have to go back and watch the lesson 2 video, because obviously lesson 3 follows lesson 2, and what we've done in lesson 2 you will need in lesson 3. So just to give you a really quick recap, we started by, on start block here, look, we created a new sprite. We called it main player, which is there, and we set it so that it could move around, no problem at all, and it can go up, down, left, right, and we told it to start in the bottom center of the screen. We also told it that it needed to stay within the screen boundaries, so it couldn't go off the screen at all. And as you can see here, we've got set life to 3, which are these little hearts here. We've also used 2 on-game updates. So the first one there is 5,000 milliseconds, or 5 seconds, and that one there is 2 seconds. So every 2 seconds, one of these is going to be generated, one of these enemies is generated, and every 5 seconds, one of these enemies are going to be generated. Now, they do pretty much exactly the same thing. The only difference is these go much faster. They come down a lot quicker than these ones. Okay, and we've also then got our collision detection, which is here, this bottom code block, which says on sprite of player. So if the player hits the enemy, then we're going to take 1 life off it, and then we're going to destroy that instance of the enemy, and we're then going to shake the camera for a few seconds, or so half a second. Okay, so let's start. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm just going to clear these away to the side, and I'm going to start now by adding in a new code block here. So what I want to be able to do is, when I press my space bar, I want to be able to fire a projectile from my spaceship. So the way we do that is if I click on sprites, and we are going to look all the way down. In fact, I've forgotten one step, sorry. On controller, I need to add this block here, sorry. So on controller, on a button, if I drag that in, put that there, and that is the first part. Now, what you'll notice, it says on a button press. A is here, which is actually my space bar, right? So on a button pressed, we need to do something. So I'm going to go back into my sprite, and we're going to look for the set projectile, which is here. I'm going to get the top one, and we're going to put that there, and we're basically going to say set projectile sprite 2, and you can see we've got a little error here. The reason we've got this error is because we don't have a variable called my sprite. We changed ours to make it called my player. So I'm going to click on that and select my player, main player, sorry, which is there. What we're going to have to do is draw a projectile. So let's draw a bullet. So I'm going to double click on this here, and what we're going to do, we're going to start off, I've already made a mistake there, look, by clicking too much. I'm going to use a yellow for this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the center. If I remember, the coordinates will appear here, so I'm going to pick 8, 8. There we are, and I'm going to do 3 across, 3, 3, 3, and there we are. So that is going to be my projectile there. Now, obviously, you can do whatever you want with this. You can have it so that it's got a red line going through it if you want. I generally don't mind. You can make whatever projectile you want. You can do a smiley face. It doesn't matter. Okay, once you've done and created this, click on the done, and we've got this now ready to go. So let's try this out. Let me recycle that, press play, and let's press the space bar. Okay, so when I press the spacebar, something is happening. It is shooting, something is happening, but obviously you can see it's coming out and going in the bottom corner. So the reason for that is because of these values here. So I'm going to change this to 1 just to show you the vertical. So let's try that now. So 1, press play. And you can see it's kind of working, but it's not, so it's going the wrong way. So what we're going to do is change this to a -50. So I click in there, and I'm just going to drag this cursor all the way over until it hits about -50. And let's try that now. Play. Okay, brilliant. That is working really well. But obviously we haven't set any collision up at this moment, so it's not actually going to do anything for us. That's going to be the next part. Now before I go on any further, can you please make sure you add in a controller, on button A pressed, add in this set projectile, draw the projectile, and obviously don't forget to set it to whatever your player is going to be called, and set it so that it's going up. Obviously if you are firing up, let me stop that. If you're firing up the screen, it needs to be 1 to -50. Okay, if you're doing across, you have to play with these numbers to work out what it is going across. So pause the video and complete this first part, please. Okay, in the last tutorial we looked at adding in the ability for a projectile. So when we basically hit the spacebar, this will go off. Now you'll notice these now I've slowed this type of enemy down to make it a little bit easier for me to test, right? And to do that, if you look at the Y velocity here underneath your enemies, this one was with me set at 100. I've now set it at 30 to make it a little bit easier to test, to make sure everything is working. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to create a collision. So a collision between the bullet and the enemy. So what we're going to do is go into the sprites option. We are going to scroll down a little bit and we're going to look at this overlap here. We're going to change a few settings here. So you can see it's got on sprite of kind player. Well, we're not hitting players, we're hitting enemies. Overlaps other sprite of kind. And then it's going to be a projectile. So basically if the enemy overlaps the projectile. Okay, so what we are then going to do is we are going to say, well, we want to destroy the enemy. So if I click back into my sprites, one of these here, look, is a destroy. So what we are going to do is it's going to say destroy my sprite. Now obviously it's giving me a little bit of a warning here and saying we haven't got a my sprite. No. So what we need to do is click here where it's got the sprite and just drag in and leave go. Now it's going to boot out whatever's in here, so I can just get rid of that very quickly. So it's basically saying destroy the sprite. And if I click on the plus here, we can add a little effect as well. Now if we want to try that out, let's click on the play here and let's shoot something. Great. So you can see now it is destroying, which is great. Fantastic. And that seems to work fairly well. The downside you've got though, I don't know if you can see this, but my bullet is keeping on going and going and going. Now ideally what I want to happen is that when my bullet hits this sprite, I want the bullet to disappear. So all we need to do is add another option in here, look, where it's got sprites. We are going to go to destroy, and we can either use the other sprite here and just drag that in, or what I can do is I can change this here to be the projectile. Okay, so I can basically say destroy the projectile as well. Okay, so that is essentially how you get that working. Now I'm going to just advance this a little bit more, and we're going to add in the ability to score. So basically if I hit one of my normal enemies, I'm going to add 1 point, and if I hit one of the fast enemies, I'm going to add 5 points. And to do that we're going to use the if statement. So I need to basically say if the bullet hits the enemy, then we're going to add 1 point, otherwise we're going to add 5 if it's the different type of enemy. So if I click on my logic and I'm going to use an if statement, which is here, and there's a few ways we can do this. Normally I do an if then else, I'm just going to use two if statements for this, right? So I'm going to say if, and you see it's got true there, so we're going to get rid of that in a moment. I'm going to go back to my logic, and I'm going to choose this option here, the one with the equal sign. And notice which one I'm looking at. I'm looking at this one here with the equals, not this one here with the 2 zeros in it. Okay, this one's got almost like 2 speech bubbles. So I'm going to click on that one and drag it in here. And what we're going to basically say is if the sprite is equal to enemy 1. So watch this again. I'm going to click up here, my sprite here, drop that in. And what we're going to say then is this the same as enemy 1? Now don't worry if this comes up with a warning, it'll go in a moment. I'm going to click my variables and I'm going to drag enemy 1 in here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add in a score. Notice the exclamation mark there has disappeared. So if I go into my info, and you can see then I got change score by 1. And I can put that in. Now I'm going to use another if statement. Now if I go back into my logic and I use another if statement, and we're going to do the same thing, we're going to add this comparator in. So if I get this here, and we're going to add the sprite in again, so click the sprite there, and we're going to say if it's equal to enemy 2, we're going to change the score, and we're going to add, say, 5 points in. So it's going to be, obviously it's a harder enemy to hit, there's less of them, so we want to give more points. Now let's just try that out for a moment. So let's play this game and let's have a look. So that's 6 points. This should be the 7th, 8th, and then that should take us up to 13. Lovely. So you can see now we've got our enemies working quite well, and the score count is working. Everything else still works as well because the health is still there as well. I'm just going to stop this for a moment. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is add in this new collision detection block. Don't forget to change this to kind enemy with projectile being near the sprite. You are going to need to drag in a destroy element and then essentially set that to the sprite. You're then going to destroy the projectile and then add in two if statements and obviously put in the equal, the comparator there. Okay, so please pause the video now and add in your little extra there. This is going to be quite easy. What we're going to do is we're going to add in a little background here for our game. Now to do this, we're going to click on the scene option and then we're going to click on start screen here. And if I click and drag that into the start block, just put it there, and then I'm going to change it so that we have an option there. Look, I'm going to put star field in. Now you can put whatever you want, I generally don't mind, but this is something that you can have a look at. There's an effect, you can have it for a certain length of time. I don't actually want that, I want it permanently, so I'm going to leave it like this. And if we then just recycle a game, if you'll notice now the background has got obviously lots of stars and so forth coming down it. So that's the next thing I'm going to ask you to do. Have a quick look at adding in a nice little background using the scene option, and then have a flick through these to see which one suits your game. The next thing that we are going to be doing is we're going to be creating our collectible. So far we've got two types of enemies. We've got a point system working, we've got health working. It's looking like a good game so far. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to move things over a little bit because I want to make a little bit of room for this. This is a longer process because I'm going to give you probably about 3 or 4 things to actually do within this time period. Okay, so what we are going to add in, we're going to add in a game block here, so on game update. Now don't worry about, it says there 500 milliseconds, we'll change that later. And we're going to now create the sprite. So if I click on sprites, get this here, set my sprite, throw that in, and we are going to rename this. So I'm going to click on the my sprite drop down and click on rename variable, and we're going to call this collect and click OK. And we are then going to say, right, of sprite, well, we'll draw it in a moment, of kind. Well, it's not technically a player, it's not a projectile, we could call it food. Fine, you know, food gives us health, power-ups. and it's definitely not an enemy. But what I am going to do is I'm going to show you this. We're going to create a new kind of sprite, and we're just going to call it collectible. And when you do that, essentially it makes then another sort of kind for us that we can use in the future. So if we wanted to make more than one collectible, so if we have a special collectible that will give us, say, 2 health up, we can obviously put it within this category. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is you're going to draw our sprite. So I'm going to just click on this, single click, and you can see now I've got my drawing panel up. So I'm going to start by using a circle, and let's see how this goes. Okay, not great. So obviously I made a bit of a mistake there. My circle's not big enough, so I'm just going to erase this, and we're going to start again from a slightly different location. Don't worry if when you do this you find that things don't work out as you best intend, as happens with me a lot of the time. This is all about playing and developing. So let's have a look. Try and get roughly to the center here. Okay, so I want to move this. In fact, do I need to move it? No, I probably don't need to move it. It's fine. So I'm going to fill the color. So I'm going to click my fill bucket, and there you are. So I've got a lovely yellow circle. And what I could do is I'm going to use my drawing tool now, and we are going to draw almost like a heart type shape. Okay, so I don't know if that is a heart shape to you, but it looks kind of hearty shape to me. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to put 1 or 2 other bits on it. There we are. Okay, so I'm happy with my collectible. Now, if you can't remember what your collectible looked like, have a look back in your planning section, which we did in lesson 1. So you should have a rough idea of what you wanted to draw. Now, I'm going to click on done with that, and obviously that is set. Now, the next thing we're going to do is get it to pick a random position to move. So initially when I was going to do this, I wanted to try and have it so that it would appear on a certain part of the screen, and then I was going to get it to move. But I thought, well, let's get it now to move across, because the enemies will move down, so let's get this one now to move across. So what we need to look at is where we're going to place it on the screen. Now, I wouldn't do it right to the top, and I wouldn't do it right to the bottom. So we look at this sort of middle-ish area. So what we are going to do is we're going to use our set option. So I'm going to go back to sprites, and we are going to set position. And notice now it's going to give me an error saying there's no such thing as my sprite. There you are. So we're going to change that to collect, because that's the name of the sprite. And then we're going to use the random number generators again from the math library. So pick random, put that in there, and then pick random, put that one in there. So essentially now I'm going to change these values. So it's going to be 10 but 150. That's then the sort of area here. And then the sort of y-axis, which is going to be the area here, is I'm going to probably set it at something like 30 to 50. Now you can play around with these values as much as you like, right? And you can basically see how they work for you. Now, if I just play the game just to show you what's going to happen, right? This isn't final, but you can basically see then where these things are going to start appearing. So there you are. Look, these are appearing all over in that area. Now, if we change this 30 to 50, let's say we go up to 80. Let's refresh the game for a second. You can see now they're appearing they're far closer to our little spaceship. So obviously, depending on how easy you want to make the game, will depend on how you want to change these variables, okay? Now, the next thing we're going to need to do is, as you can see, these are all static at the moment. What I actually want is it to fly across the screen. So we need to set a velocity. And like we've done with the enemies here, where we've used the Vy, the velocity Y, we now need to use the velocity X option. So if I go back into my sprite and we're going to use this one here, set my sprite, and again change it to collect. We change this to velocity X, and I can either do it so it's choosing a random speed, or I can set a constant speed. So I'm going to set a constant speed with this one just to show you. So I'm going to put 40 in, and what we also wanted to do is automatically destroy events off the screen. So I'm going to scroll down here and get this one, and then change that to collect. We want it to auto destroy and turn that to on. Right, let's just see now what this is going to do. So let's play that. So we can see now these are just flying across the screen, and they randomly appear in and just flying across the screen, which is good. Now the downside is this 500 is way too frequent. So the maximum there, look, it looks to be 5 seconds or 5,000 milliseconds. But what we can do is I can manually type something in here. So if I do 15,000, even though it's not an option here, if I do 15,000, that's basically a game update every 15 seconds. So every 15 seconds, one of these is randomly going to appear. Now, again, you could, if you wanted to, put a random number generator in here, and you could really get it truly random. That's your choice. Now, that is the first part here. What we need to then do is we need to set the collision up. Now, essentially, if I collide with this, I want it to give me 1 health. So what we are going to do is click on the sprites, and we are going to use this, the overlaps again, which is the collision detection. So where we've got on sprite of kind player, other sprite is collectible. And what I want to do is, if I hit the collectible, I want to basically give myself a life. So I'm going to say change life by 1. Now notice it does a -1, just change that to 1. And then what we want to do is we want to destroy the sprite, otherwise it'll just keep on incrementing. So I go back to sprite and we look for the destroy. And then we change this one here from my sprite to collect, and we can put a little effect on it as well. Let's do, we'll do hearts then. There we are, nice little effect there. Okay, so let's see what that does. So let's play that. So every 15 seconds now this is going to appear. Let's shoot some of these, get some score up. 15 seconds is a long time. Oh gosh, I don't know if you just saw it. Now it just came on the end there. So let's wait now for the next part. Right, lovely. Okay, so I don't know if you just saw that. Now let me just stop this game for a second. But when I hit the sprite there, it added another score in, so that's great. Now there is one downside. If I was a little bit quicker, I'm just gonna pause this for a second and make these sprites come on a little bit more often. The issue I've got at the moment is that if I were to shoot the sprite, essentially it destroys it. It doesn't destroy it, sorry. So what I want to try and do is have it so that if I accidentally was shooting and I accidentally hit, like I've done there, if I hit it, what I want to basically do is I want to destroy this sprite. Alright, so I basically want to destroy the health. So if I accidentally shoot it. So what we do is we basically going to use this sort of code block again. The only difference is if I go to sprite and we're going to look at this one here. And we are going to change a life by -1 this time, and we are going to destroy the sprite. So destroy, change the sprite of player. It's obviously a collectible, but this time, if the sprite wasn't a player but it was the projectile, then basically we are going to take 1 life off our player. So if the projectile of this spaceship hits our little power up, then unfortunately we are going to lose a life. So it's really important that we actually hit these and get them collected. Now if you wanted to, you don't have to do the life here. You could actually do it via points. So if you wanted to, instead of saying change life, if I go back into the info here, you've got change score by. So I could essentially add in 10 points to my score, just as an example. Okay, your choice entirely. So a little bit of a longer task here. This is what I'd like you to do. Add in a on-game update, change it to however long you want. I'm going to stick to 15 seconds with this one. You need to add in the set collect block, change the variable name to collect, and then create a new kind called collectable, or whatever you want to call it. Draw your collectible sprite, set it then to pick a random number for position, and then set it to fly across the screen on the x-axis using velocity x, and then obviously don't forget to auto-destroy. Once you've done that, then set the two collisions up as well. Okay, so pause the video now and add this last part in, please. This is one of the last things that we are going to look at doing. We're going to add some music into our game, and we are going to add in a background as well. I say background is going to be what's called a splash screen. So when the game loads up, it's the first thing that somebody's going to see, and we're going to try and add some instructions on there as well. So the way we do this, you can see I've moved everything around a little bit. I've just move these code blocks away because I'm going to be added into this start block. So I'm going to click on the scene option, and we're going to click on this option here that says set background image, and I'm going to drag it in, and I'm going to click on the background image, and I'm going to start off by just using the paint bucket. We're going to go black and put it in. Now one thing you'll notice is this is a lot bigger than the sprite. This is 160 by 120 pixels wide, so it's much bigger. You'll notice there's no text here as well, which means you have to draw everything out. So I'm going to start by drawing mine, and just going to call mine Space Chase. You can call yours whatever you want, whatever you can think of, do it. So Space Chase. One thing to bear in mind, if you are trying to do this on a mouse trackpad, it is going to probably be a little bit more difficult than a normal mouse, so don't panic too much about it. I don't necessarily mind what you make, just make something so it looks fairly good. I'm just going to add in a few yellow dots there for stars. If you wanted to, you could draw some of your enemies here if you've got time, or you could draw some of your collectibles, your spaceship, or whatever. Leave the bottom part though free, right? Because when we add in the text is going to go into the bottom. So once I've done that, I'm going to click done, and then what we are going to do is we're going to select the option here where we've got info, and we are going to go all the way down. No, sorry, we're not going to go with info. Sorry, my bad. We're going to go to game, and I'm going to go all the way down to this one here which says show long text. So if I click on that, and we're going to drag that in, and then we're going to basically give some instructions. So use the arrows to move the player. Now you can add a number of these in. I'm just going to add everything into one. Avoid the enemy and collect the health. Okay, so that's now going to remain at the bottom. Now if I just recycle my game for a second, you can see Space Chase comes up with an instruction, and it's automatically put this press button A in, which is amazing. So if I press button A, everything starts. Now if I just stop this, you can see there's a problem here. This background is still there. Now I want to get rid of that. I don't really want this Space Chase background to be on when the game's playing, so all we do is we add another background in, and then if I click on it, and we're going to change this one back to whatever color you wanted. So I'm going to go back to black, and now when we recycle this, press A, great, it goes back to as it was normally. Now the last thing we are going to look at is adding a little bit of music in. Now music is fairly nice, and it's quite basic within the software, don't forget, because it's like an 8-bit type game. So what we're going to do is we are going to click on this music and we are going to click on play melody. Now before I actually do this, you are going to have to add in another block. If I just put this melody in here in the main on start, it would play once, but what I want to happen is this plays all the time. So I'm going to click on my loops and I'm going to grab this forever loop and I'm going to add in the melody here. Now by default you can see there's nothing there and the tempo set. So if I click on this here, I've now got an editor. There's a gallery with some built-in music there for you, but I think it's always nice if we make our own. So I'm going to just start by clicking in some of these. I'm going to clue what I've just made, but it's there. Okay. Now if you want to hear your creation, click on the play. Now you might want to change things, and you can, no problem at all. You can try different things, but you'll probably notice that's not really spacey or anything like that. Well, if we change our tempo, let's go up to 820 just to see what it does. Okay, that's a little bit better. Now what we can do is we can add more of these in. So if I add in another melody, and I'm going to change this one. And again, we'll put that to 820. So what will happen is, hopefully now as the game is playing, it'll switch between these two. And you can make as many melodies as you want. They'll just play one after the other. So let's just see now what that does. Okay, so we've got the A. Nothing's playing at the moment, which is good. And we've got this here, which is good. Now then, what we can do, this music may be a little bit too loud, so in the music option there, you have an option to set the volume of the music. So if you wanted to be a bit quieter, so you can see I've set that one out to 20. Let's restart the game. There you are. That's, I don't know if the microphone's picking it up, but that is much quieter now on my PC. The last thing I just thought of now, you might want to add in, if you've just noticed, what we could do on button A press, we could add in a sound, which is, if I look, pew pew. Let's have a look. So now when I press my space bar, I've now got a sound file there coming out. Now again, if you want to do, you can increase the sound there, you can increase the noise of it by using the set volume. So I'm just going to add that in there. Let's set the volume there higher, 103. Let's try it. There we are. That's much better. Okay, now that is only a little bit of an extra. You might not actually need to reset the volume. You may just have it as it is, and you can obviously get rid of everything there. So in a nutshell, that is how you would build the entire game. There's lots to do here. There's lots of things we've thought about. The only thing we haven't done is looked at how would we go on to another level, but I'll probably save that for another video at some other point. Now then, what do you need to do? Well, the last part of this is quite simple. You need to add in a background image, draw it, add in some text to explain what you need to do, add in then another background image after you've done that, create a forever loop, and add in some melodies there so you've got some background music playing as well. So that pretty much concludes everything that we had set out to do. We've created a space game with a player, which the player can obviously move using arrow keys or the directional joystick, as well as creating enemies and collectibles. Hopefully you can have a little bit of fun building this game.